Arsenal handed a final chance to put the pressure back on City. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith, Black Man Twitter, Yankee Gunner. That's right. The reason I say it's a final chance is I believe the game tomorrow, as we record this today on Thursday, is the last time we will play before City this season in the Premier League. I believe that is correct. Now, having said that, it is rumored that City's Brighton fixture could be put on the Wednesday of the last week. So that could be interesting. They play Madrid, then they play Chelsea, then they play Brighton, then they play Brentford. It could be an interesting run-in. But what I will say is if it's all down to that last week, I don't know who will be hosting the podcast because I will be unavailable because I will not survive it. So that's where my head's at with that. By the way, so a couple of things. Firstly, I fly tomorrow for Chicago. Feels like I was just in New York. Fly tomorrow for Chicago. And we've got the Chicago event. Now, what I will tell you is, as is always the case last minute with these things, there are, I think, a couple of tickets for the Saturday podcast. It should be a really fun one because not only are we going to be there, but Gooner Talk, Gooner's Pod, there's going to be Sophie Nicolaus going to be there right from Highbury Squad. So it's just going to be a good crew. I think it's going to be more of a party kind of environment. If you want to be there, reach out one way or the other, email, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, carrier pigeon, whatever you got, smoke signals. We'll connect with you. You can certainly let you know how to get your hands on one of those final tickets while they're still available. But there's some big news I can announce right now. On Monday, tickets will go on sale for the Arsenal Vision and Arsblog, Arscast joint podcast at Union Chapel in Islington on the final weekend of the season. In May, on Saturday, right before the Wolves game. We'll probably already be champions, so it's going to be a very celebratory atmosphere. We'll be talking about our plans for the open-top bus parade. Now, here's the thing. It is on the 27th of May, by the way. Just pulled that right out of the top of my head and definitely didn't get it from Clive typing it into the chat because I'm a true professional. So Clive will be there. Tim will be there. Paul will be there. I will be there. Andrew will be there. James will be there. Lots of special, secret, super secret guests will be there. Last year's was one of the highlights of my life. And I say that with absolutely no exaggeration. And we would love to see you there. And there will be more announcements of more events coming. But Union Chapel, May 27th. Now, because we ran into a situation where it was an absolute mess trying to get tickets last year, what we will do, talk to Andrew about this, is we'll make tickets available to patrons first. And then they can go on and be available for everybody else. So, if you've thought about signing up for Patreon, we always try to put out a ton of content. So you have tons of stuff, video, audio, there's stats stuff, there's tactics stuff, there's scouting stuff, there's rewatch stuff. If you do want to sign up there, obviously, we've already made our contribution to the fundraiser, but that's this month's Patreon supporting that. So if you want to sign up and be able to get the first shot at tickets to Union Chapel, you can do that there. By the way, that generous donor who agreed to match $20,000 of donations has made his contribution. And that means as we sit today, we are at £208,000 raised for the Coaching for Life program in the Zaatari refugee camp. It is an extraordinary display of philanthropy and generosity from you. Every time we go and meet people in person, as we did in New York, as we will in Chicago, as we have in London, the thing that strikes me is how wonderful people are. Just people I would just hang out with anyway and talk about the Arsenal with. And so we love you so much. Thank you for everything you do being a part of this. And thank you for that contribution. We have a few more announcements about contributions that are going to go in. And we are going to have an eye-watering sum at the end of this fundraiser. And literally, I'm not going to get emotional here. I probably will get emotional at some point. So that's a lot of preamble. Adrian Clarke from the Breakdown Live is coming up after I speak to Clive. He's going to talk throwing away leads, substitutions, holding in Tierney, and is Declan Rice the next piece of the puzzle? I hope you listen all the way through because Adrian is a brilliant talker of the game, analyzer of the game. But of course, the analyzer of the game we love most here at the Arsenal Vision Podcast is Clive. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
I have to say, Clive, the stats guy and civilian thing we do on the Patreon, like it's very niche content. It's for some people, it's not for others. They did an hour this week and the first 17 minutes were just waffle about New York. But the way they described all of our different dance styles alone was quite something. It is nice to see your face digitally, although I do miss seeing it in person. It was lovely to see you and I'm looking forward to seeing you in May.
Yeah, amazing weekend, and met loads of people, and the quality of person that we meet, we are very fortunate, Elliot, to have them follow us and listen to us and let them into our lives, let them into their lives, actually. So yeah, very, very, very lucky. Heavy weekend. My head's back on, right, and I'm thinking football. And with Adrian following, I think we're going to have a more of a tactical show today, would you say?
I would say so. I think it's going to be top-class analysis, which means we need to get immediately to Mikel Arteta's pre-match press conference where he says Smith Rowe's career at Arsenal is over. That's how I read the quotes. Clive, is that how... No, I'm kidding. We're not going to go full talk sport here. Let's just say this couple things. Firstly, really crushing defeat for the Arsenal women yesterday against Manchester United. The injury situation there makes ours look like a full bill of health. Just tremendously unfortunate. I know Tim has put out an Arscast, a women's Arscast. Clive and Tim did an extraordinarily good women's football pod for our patrons, and that is going to become a regular feature. People have loved it, and I loved it, and it's accessible in a way that I think was really appreciated. A couple other things. If we weren't pushing for a title, this pod could just be a Schadenfreude pod because Chelsea are melting down. Spurs are melting down. Daniel Levy literally said, hey, we haven't won anything, but, at least we're not fighting relegation. We had some good times. We were higher than Arsenal for a little while there. Like, go find the quotes if you haven't found them. They're hilarious. Lastly, Chelsea, the rumor is due to FFP, every single player is available for sale. So apparently 8-year contracts were not the galaxy brain genius move that Todd Boehly thought. And if you haven't heard the stories of Todd Boehly's post-match dressing room speech where he singled out Raheem Sterling and told them that they're all an embarrassment, you should find that too. So I would say it is a vintage year for Schadenfreude. If, let's say a few years from now, you're opening your Schadenfreude fridge and you're trying to pull out the bottle of Schadenfreude you want, you're going to look and you're going to say, the 2023 was a beautiful vintage of Schadenfreude. And we should have indulged it more, but we're chasing a title, Clive, so we don't have time.
Yeah, we don't have time. And plus, they're lining us up to be the ones that have failed in somehow, right? Because we had this mythical 8-point lead with one game in hand, with not such much goal difference, and we to play Man City away. Let's not think about that. We had this lead, and of course, we've blown this lead, and so now we're the ones that have failed. Well, you know what? Let's just take that on during this podcast, shall we? Because I'm not in that place.
Well, so let's do the pre-match press conference first. The Saliba stuff doesn't sound super encouraging. He's not training yet. And you always have to be careful with Mikel because I do think sometimes he sandbags on these comments to keep people guessing. But it does sound bad with Saliba. Now it's more of I don't know if he'll play again this season than he's making good progress. It's definitely taken a darker turn on Zinchenko. He says, we'll see about that one as well. It's not certain. It's a muscular injury and it needs some time to heal, and we're not there yet. I could understand Mikel wanting to be really careful so that he can take as many players that he considers critical, indispensable to the City game midweek next week. But in terms of this game, if it's no Zinchenko and no Saliba, are you looking to make a change to that back line, or are you willing to go again with Holding and Tierney?
Yeah, I would go again with Holding and Tierney, and I wouldn't play Zinchenko, even though he's been pictured in training. I think he's so important for the City game that I would sit him down until that game or bring him on for last 20. But I wouldn't risk him. And I've been thinking about this, Elliot, on the plane back and just getting my head together again about what happened at West Ham. And there's been lots of good analysis, so I'll just try to keep it simple. Right? We dominated that game. We were absolutely fine. None of us would think about Holding and Tierney. We were literally playing like the best team in the league. We were superb in both of the first thirds of the Liverpool game and the West Ham game. And then we stopped doing things. And for me, we stopped playing two-touch football. We started to keep the ball too long. The West Ham penalty was such an instructive one for where we were going wrong. And we was in the bar together, and you could see my face getting mad as Holding was trotting across the pitch, carrying it to the person who's going to pass to. His whole body pointing towards the person he was going to pass to, who then had no time to either clip it line. He didn't feel comfortable opening his body out to clip it line, so he goes into the one player in the middle of the pitch that's now being closed down because it took too long on the first pass. And then we lose the ball, and then I don't want to talk about a penalty because I don't think it was one, but this is all about two-touch. Move it quickly, aggressively. If you move it early, Holding, you can drop off to receive it. If you move it late, you can't drop off to create an option. And so you end up pinning people into awkward situations. It was so bad. I was fuming about it. And so what do we need to do if we're going to play Holding and Tierney? And this is something I want listeners to really listen to. I think they are what you call traditional players. So they're not like your line breaker like Saliba. They're not your inverted fullback, but they are traditional. They're traditional fullbacks. The sort of fullback that a year and a half ago, Kieran Tierney, we were bemoaning that when he got injured, we lost the league. We lost the top four. And so he's a traditional fullback, and there are many teams that play that position, probably about 16 teams that play with traditional fullbacks. So it's not a drama there. He's not completely gone out of fashion. But if you are going to have traditional fullback and a traditional centre-half that wants to get the first ball and attack the ball and smash everything, then why not play a traditional system where you have a true double pivot in the middle of your pitch? You play in a box, you have two true double pivot, which protects your centre-half, your fourth choice centre-half. It protects him. It protects your build-up. It takes the build-up responsibility away from Kieran Tierney. And it allows him room to fly up down that side, knowing that his left centre mid can maybe drop into left back. We've sort of done that before, haven't we, Elliot? You know what I mean? Who can progress the ball. I think we need to stop overthinking it and simplify. If you've got traditional players that are more what players used to be in those positions, then play a traditional system. Don't have your eights so high, so early, so long, that when teams are going long on us, we can't refill the bucket of midfield and compete for the second ball quickly enough. And that's why we're losing control of games. Traditionalize this, simplify this, get back to your 4-2-3-1 shape, or your 4-2-3, and your Kieran Tierney can push up to make 5 and get back. That's what you want to do anyway, and do that, and that pushes people inside, and you still get your 5 lanes covered, you still got your attacking threat, but you're getting people doing what they are comfortable doing rather than players in uncomfortable roles when we're asking to be part of our build-up in a technical way which they cannot do. So take it away from them, protect your team, control games, and get your front 4 up, keep them up, and then you choose who joins them as number 5. That's the way I would approach it, mate.
Yeah, it's interesting because if we weren't in such a pressurized situation where every single point feels existential, I would say, you know what? I just think that Tierney's inclusion has too much of an impact on the way we try to control possession, always have a next pass, always have our distances right, keep the ball in the attacking third. I'd go to Shaq at left back to play that sort of half space, almost midfield role next to Partey, and I'd play Trossard, or if he trusts him, Smith Rowe in the left 8. And yeah, it's more attacking and it's a little bit dangerous, but here's the thing. We're not shutting the back door right now either. We just conceded 2 goals to a West Ham team that has a dreadful attack this season. So but because it's such a pressurized environment, because you don't know how that tweak will work, when Southampton is coming to the Emirates, it is just easier to say, you know what, that's Galaxy brain. I'm going to play my backup center back at center back. I'm going to play my backup fullback at fullback. And I'm going to ask my players to go out and beat Southampton at home, because if you can't do that, you don't have much of an argument. Sky Sports put out quite a few statistics, graphics on Rob Holding's passing versus Saliba's passing. And then I think they tried to link that to Saka's involvement, Saka's, quote, slump, unquote. I'm using the words they framed it as, since Holding has come in, and showing the decrease in touches, the decrease in passes received, things like that.
You know why that is?
Well, I was about to ask you, so I would appreciate that insight. Thank you.
Well, and listeners will tell you, I've said this a lot. It's much easier for a righty to go to the left. Your body shapes that way, so it's much easier to go to the left. So Rob Holding finds it more comfortable going to the left, and Gabriel feeds it down that side. It's much harder to open your body out to go towards the right if you're a righty. It's more risk involved in that technique. So he's taking a comfortable option. right? And that's why we're not getting the ball through to Odegaard because he's a bit eye for needle stuff. He doesn't fancy it. It's much easier to pass to Gabriel, and Gabriel plays the passes, right? So we're losing our side there. There are ways around this, and I think Thomas Partey's tried to drop in to help him on occasions. But again, if you have a double pivot, it helps because people are now targeting the single pivot, knowing that our centre-back telegraphs his passes, right? So it doesn't aid to control. But there are ways you can get around this, by the way. You can get your left centre-back to diagonal across to the right-hand side. So these tweaks need to happen because we've lost Saka for a bit. And I totally agree those data. I didn't know the numbers, so I saw it today. But you get the feeling we didn't utilise Saka enough at Liverpool in particular because Robertson wasn't great. And we were so focused on the hole behind Trent when actually we should have focused on Robertson because I think there was joy there. We didn't get the ball into that side enough. And losing Odegaard a bit, Elliot, is part of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I think we have to remember, it's not that we lost the best center back in the league potentially. We did. And one of the most influential fullbacks in the league, we did. They're not defenders for us. They're ball players for us. They're ball progressors for us. They're first phase buildup in Saliba's game. And by the way, one of the other data points with the Saliba Holding thing was the number of passes in the opposition half. Rob Holding's making many fewer passes in the opposition half. I think that's a really specifically important data point because it tells you two things, right? It tells you about how we're keeping the ball in the attacking third, but also it tells you about the line height, right? Where are we playing? We're not playing as advanced. And to be fair, I think Zinchenko's a big part of that, but he's only missed the one game and Saliba's missed quite a few at this point. So it does have cascading impact for the way we want to play and where we want to play.
It does, Elliot. And I think I watched the Palace and Leeds game, and particularly the first game against Palace. Rob Holding was high. He was fizzing that ball. I honestly, it was really, really good.
I remember that.
I thought, wow, this is interesting. He's really learned. But what happens when you're a backup player? Sometimes you can really do it for the first couple, 2, 3.
Tim says this a lot, right?
Oh, it's true. You can. When you go to 4, 5, 6, then suddenly you default back to who you were, maybe a bit more tired, the adrenaline and the circumstances. Anfield's not an easy place to go. We dropped away. And of course, what happens then when you have a distance between your furthest guy back and the guy at the furthest at the front, what tends to happen? If that's too big, then you lose your control. Then you're back to El Neni Ceballos Arsenal. Remember that one? Trundling through the big spaces in the middle of the pitch? That's not going to work for me. No chance. And so our distances are much bigger. So when we lose the ball, our offensive distance are not great. When we lose it, we don't counter press back because we're losing it in isolated positions. Hence what happened to us at West Ham. And so it's all about our line height. It really is. It's massively important. So what happens when you're a centre forward and you see your centre back somewhere in the terraces? What do? You drop deep. You think, well, I can't see him. I better drop deep to receive it. So where was Jesus playing in the game against West Ham? Dropping deep to receive the ball because he knows he needs to come and help that guy. Help him to see him, to get it off him because he doesn't feel comfortable fizzing it through the lines. It's just an adjustment thing. And I think there are ways to get around it. I keep coming back to a double pivot. Whether it's Jorginho, whether it's Xhaka, but I don't really care. Having two in front creates the build-up options, particularly when Tierney is playing. When Zinchenko plays, it's less of an issue. When Tierney is playing, make him do the touchline stuff. He's brilliant at it. Don't make him come inside and be a centre mid because he can't do it. He's not natural. He hasn't got a ball-dominant gene. He's a space animal. He crushes people in space and he runs through space and he kicks the ball through space. He is not an interior player, and let's not make him be one because we're suffering for it. It's not natural for him to leave 15 yards off his touchline to receive it and then turn it around in a millisecond turning circle to pop it out the other side. That's Zinchenko, who's a number 10 by design. That isn't Kieran Tierney, and we've got to stop doing it.
Not only is it brilliant insight, but you've just given us, if not the best, a top 3 ever podcast title. So I just want to say Space Animal, that's as good as it gets, man. Space Animal. I mean, I'd watch that movie. You know, right after Cocaine Bear, Space Animal is a sequel coming soon to a theater near you or a streaming device near you. Yes. So, well, let's get to some of Mikel's comments on a few other things. It is the case that I think people really want to see Emil Smith-Rowe come back in and make an impact. And one of the things that we've said a lot is that when Mikel talks about Smith-Rowe, he has a very specific way of talking about him, not patting him on the back for what he's done, wanting to push him on to what he could do in the future. And this quote, I mean, it is, I think, of a piece with previous quotes on Emil Smith-Rowe's progression, quote, he's pushing. And in football, what you did a year ago, a month ago is not important. It's about what you do now, what you do yesterday, and what you do tomorrow. The player has to have that mindset, and the contribution has to be now to the team, has to make us better and make us win games. He's very close. The funny thing is, like, up until the he's very close, you're like, I don't know, but the he's very close part adds a tinge of optimism to that. How do you read that quote? Because there's no question in my mind that if you need a goal late in a game, like all due respect to Vieira, who may have a very bright future as an Odegaard kind of player, and to Reece Nelson, who's given us one of the great moments probably of your life as well, my life too. But Emil Smith-Rowe was our second leading scorer last season. He has goals in him. Not having him in the group, I think, is to our detriment.
You see, this is where I agree with Mikel, and I smiled when I heard that today. Because the amount of times I've been involved in non-league for years, not anymore, but I have been. And the amount of times a player would be offered to us from 2 levels up. So, I used to play for so-and-so, used to play for so-and-so. And I would say to the manager, well, he's not playing for him now. He's as good as his last training session. It's as simple as that. He's here for a reason. We would be 2 levels below. He's here for a reason. What people are doing, they're extrapolating their memories, mate, onto Smith-Rowe. And I just want you to tell me the last time you saw him play well for Arsenal Football Club. Just tell me the last time. It's a long time ago. You know, I remember him coming on against Burnley in the 0-0 game when Lacazette missed the open goal. Smith-Rowe was in that game, and when he played well, we played well. He was devastatingly good. Just
since people are going to scream it, his header sets up our equalizer.
Yeah, I watched the game. You were there. Yeah. I watched the game. It was a header in the penalty box. It was an okay performance. I'm talking about.
I'm just mentioning it for the people screaming it at their listening devices.
I'm talking about match. When I say remember the last game, it's been a long time since he had a really influential game for the club. That's what I want to say.
Yep.
To clarify. And he's done good things, but he hasn't had an influential game. I've seen those influential games where he's literally our best attacker. He isn't at the moment. It's a simple. Martinelli screamed past him. That was a debate a year ago. Saka's gone to a different stratosphere. Trossard's come in. Look what he's done in a short period of time. People debate Vieira. Well, let's wait and see on that. I'm not going to say anything on that one because I think it's to be discovered. But he's obviously doing something in training on a day-to-day basis that puts him ahead of Smith-Rowe at the moment. So Smith-Rowe needs to fight back. It's as simple as that. He needs to fight back. The world has changed. There are more people competing for positions that I want to play in. So I better over-exceed expectations. Because it's not what you did, it's what you're doing now. It's such a good line, and it's really important. It's what you're doing now, what you're going to do tomorrow. And are you showing me the right things to make me believe you're going to get better tomorrow? It's solely up to him. He's in the right environment, the right people around him, the right support. The fans love him. Everyone wants him to do well. We need his goals. Well, just do it. Just make yourself impossible to ignore that you have to be selected. And that's the harsh world that football is. We all want to play, right? But not everyone can.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. So there's something else that I like that Mikel said that I think we all need to think about and realize as it relates to this season, because he talked about sort of the wobble that we're having, or whatever you want to call it. But he said, this is how a season goes. You can't expect it to be linear progression, right? That it's not just a linear path. And seasons have these moments. And I think this is the thing, because we have the T1000 Terminator chasing us down for this title, we feel that there's no margin for error, and there may in fact be no margin for error. But the reality is that seasons aren't, we won 38 games and we were champions, right? And because that's not how seasons go, even to get to 92 or 91 or 90 points or 93 points, somewhere along the way, there's going to be a period where you go, ooh, we don't look very good, right? I mean, even the Invincibles dropped a ton of dumb points. They drew a lot of games.
They drew 12 games.
Can you imagine Twitter if we drew 12 games this season? And so is it important for us, because I think there has been a lot of throwing in the towel because City looks so good. Is it important for us to remember that, and maybe this is what the players take into this game tomorrow, we still get to be 7 points clear of City. Forget the games in hand. We have the points on the board. They don't. When we go to the Etihad on Wednesday, we have a chance to be 7 points clear, and that's what we have to go do tomorrow. And like any season, the twists and turns in it, these 2 points we just had may just be two of the points that got us the title. It is not. Yeah. It is never a direct linear path to the title. Right down to Manchester City's famous Aguero moment, right on the last day to keep the title. I mean, they collapsed to let United in it. They get a 95th minute winner or whatever the heck it was. Like, it's never going to just be a straight path to green.
Yeah, we've had a couple of 2-2s lately, but Elliot, that 2-2 could have been Aston Villa away, right? Could have been Bournemouth at home. Yep. This has been staring us in the face to how we play. It's been staring us in the face while it's in the post, mate. And if we won those games, we didn't quite win these games. I think the nature of them has really hurt us. And then we look at Man City and the engines revving up, right? So now the cloak of doom has been laid over all Arsenal world. The media have decided this is what happens. Man City have got it. Us haven't got the experience. So we're willing ourselves into not competing and giving up. I heard Amy on the podcast the other day talking. She had a great speech about not giving up, and she was absolutely right. Why are we giving up? Why are we letting this come into our psyche? If we as fans give up, how the hell can we ask the players to keep going? And I think this is the moment right here and now to say, you know what, I'm not having it. I'm not having it. They've got to beat us still. I'd be much happier if everybody fit and in peak condition, but that's not how it's going to work. Nathan Ake pulled up in the game for City last night, and they're going to play.
Yeah, looked like a hamstring.
Looks like a hamstring. I don't think that fixes in a week, right? So they're going to play Laporte there potentially. Well, he's not as quick as Nathan Ake, so let's see what happens, right? Suddenly there's a window into their back line, right? So things can change very, very quickly, and we cannot give up. We cannot beat ourselves. I don't like looking back too much, right? But I always remember when Leeds 2000, I think Manchester United 2003, Sol Campbell elbow to Solskjaer, and he got suspended, and we just beat ourselves. We could have still won that league. We didn't win the next games. We let it affect us too much because Big Sol wasn't there. We were the best team in 2003, and we fixed it the next year, right? So that was big regret. We beat ourselves psychologically. We beat ourselves. We can't let that happen because of this monster club with his 130 plus charges against it, potentially have raised the bar to such a state that we put ourselves in this mental state. Yeah. Like I said, I feel no stress apart from the fact, can we be the best version of us? That's the only thing that worries me. If I see us doing silly things that are beneath us, then I think, can we do better? If City win all their games and they beat us, then tip my hat to them, right? It doesn't really worry me. But as long as we're the best version of ourselves, I'm comfortable with the outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, I know this is also very hindsight, Pollyannish behavior, but I'm just going to say it. Like, I think we are so fortunate that we did not get past Sporting, because we would have been playing yesterday, and then we'd be playing Southampton on Sunday, and then we'd be playing City on Wednesday. Yeah. City have a nothing game this weekend. They would have had essentially a week's rest from Bayern to us to be as fresh as they want. And we would have been playing Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday. And if you look at Zinchenko and you look at Saliba and any hope that we have both of them for the Etihad or even one, there's just no way we would want to be in that position. And so now we play Friday. We get the extra day's rest. I mean, City will, I'll be surprised if they're not going to make 11 changes, But Rodri won't be risked, and De Bruyne won't be risked, and Haaland won't be risked. None of those guys are going to play this week.
Or they'll play partial minutes, right? And that's the thing. They can make 5 changes and get 5 people off, so no one played more than an hour. Easy.
Yeah. So we could have been going into this City game on very, very short rest with a team that might be showing that it's flagging. And now we have a good amount of time between Southampton and City. Clive, I think you know what the Southampton game is, don't you?
Well, is it called a trap game?
It's a trap game. Trap game. It is a trap game. Yeah, it is. The City's on the horizon. Everybody's saying it's the title tilt. We're at home against a team we're heavily favored against, and all eyes are on how we keep our players fresh. Should we rotate a little bit? Should we be ready for City? And there's Southampton just waiting to Theo Walcott us. But I don't think that'll happen. I think we will get the big response. I'll read you the quotes, by the way, because I think they are. I think they are really good. On his confidence, Arteta said, "I'm very confident." But this is a line I like. Twists and turns are part of anything you do, especially in football. Whatever the aim or target is, it's not going to go in a linear progression. You have to know that and prepare for that. And the way the team reacted this week is incredibly positive, and we want to see that tomorrow night. I think we've been handed a couple of favors with when this game happens, with where this game happens, with who this team is. I think we can beat them. I think we can play really well and go into the City game in a good position. So, Clive, I'm not going to ask you about City because that would be falling into the trap game narrative, because we'll talk about that next week after we've beaten Southampton. But do you at least feel that we have to be a little bit thankful for the fact that we have one target to focus on, and it's making things very straightforward at a time when our team, I saw a tweet the other day, it just all caps, Manchester City have no injuries. It's amazing. And I'm like, well, first of all, it's the drugs. And second of all, it's money. But setting that aside, I'm kidding. That's all a joke. And please don't anybody send me a legal letter. But then, of course, Ake's hamstring goes pop. So, karma is a thing. Jinxes are a thing. But like we are right, I think, on the edge in terms of having the group we need to get this done. But we wouldn't want to be stretching it any thinner or pushing it to its limit with a couple extra games every week.
No, I totally agree. The Sporting game was a blessing, and I feel frustrated about
except for the Saliba and Tomiyasu injuries, of course.
Well, that was a game that it probably was a game that changed our season. Let's be honest, because what's happened to us, we've been destabilised. We were destabilised at the end of last season with our back line injuries, right, and our centre mid injuries, and we've been destabilised. Ben White, another example, gets booked in 2 games, disappears after the booking. Really good player, not as effective, as aggressive. He's a front foot defender. He knows he can't afford a suspension, so he drops away, right? These things really, really matter. So yeah, I think the Southampton game is obviously huge. I see it as a separate entity, Elliot. I think we have to win it, obviously. But the reason why we have to win it is because we need to force City to care about their fixtures. They have got, if they were playing Madrid in a Champions League final, it wouldn't be an issue for us. Could be it's after the season. It's in the middle of like the 10th of June or something like that. They've literally got 2 Champions League finals in the running against the best. They're the best 2 teams in Europe. Let's be honest about it, right? They're the best 2 teams in Europe, and they've got to play each other twice. That's 2 huge games. There's going to be an emotional impact from those games. And we need to be close enough to make sure that any slippage, we can take it. If we don't beat Southampton, then we're causing a problem for ourselves. We really are. So it's so important for that regard that we really do put pressure on the fixture list. And I go back to my scenario that someone sent me. We can afford to draw 2 games and win all the rest. And one of those games has to be City. Well, we've drawn the other one already. So we need to focus on winning against Southampton, do what we need to do against City to bring something back from there. And if you do bring something back from there, it's hard enough to get tickets now. Imagine how hard it will be to get tickets after that game if we do bring something back. It'll just be incredible. And we'll be on the downslope. Targets change. Focus changes. It becomes even more clear what we have to do. And then we go from there.
Yeah, and this is why football's a little silly when you try to just analyze it from a prediction standpoint. Because if you looked at our season, let's say we win this title and we get to 91 points or whatever it is. You say, oh, well, you lost at Spurs and you lost at City, but you still won the title, everyone would say, okay, that can happen. But what if instead we won at Spurs and we won at City, but it turns out we lost at Everton, right? Like that's the thing. You know, look at City. City dropped points at home to Frank Lampard's Everton.
Yeah.
City dropped points to Nottingham Forest, right? I mean, Liverpool are dreadful, but they beat United 7-0. The seasons are ultimately, I think teams finish where they belong. And I think we belong either as champions or second. But how they get there isn't always exactly how you would have predicted they got there. And so we'll get there how we get there. But, you know, right now, the only way we get there is we beat Southampton on Friday, not start thinking about Manchester City on Wednesday not till we're 2-0 up, not till we're 3-0 up, not till we're 4-0 up, but till the ref blows the final whistle and the 3 points are in the bag. And we make some amends for throwing away 2 points at the Olympic Stadium. We have a sensational, long conversation with Adrian Clarke coming up, and we're going to get into the Holding and Tierney thing a bit more, Smith Rowe a bit more. Declan Rice at the end is brilliant, so I want to leave space for that. So we'll say goodbye for now. We'll have an instant reaction tomorrow from Chicago. Hope to see some of you there at the event. I am slightly aware of the fact that my voice is only just starting to round the corner healing from New York, and we're doing it all over again, so I should be better by the time we get to Union Chapel in May, but that's another story. So here's what I'm going to do first before we go to Adrian Clarke. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you that if you are treating your body in a way that's not great, you should do something about that. One of the things you can do is you can take Athletic Greens for AG1. The reason I started taking Athletic Greens from AG1 is because I had gut health issues. I had a friend that was taking it for the same thing. He recommended it. I started taking it and I loved it. The nice thing is I was also able to take all those gummy vitamins where the second ingredient on the back is sugar, throw them away, just take one thing in the water, drink it down, tastes great, start a day, gives me energy, recovery, the vitamins and minerals I need, whole food source superfoods, adaptogens, probiotics, and it helped me with the gut health issues I had. Great for sleep and recovery, designed by athletes, for athletes too. So from a recovery standpoint, makes for a great post-workout drink as well. They're a philanthropic organization, as we like to consider ourselves as well. So they've contributed a lot to charitable causes. And if you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, it works for all that. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then AG1 from Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/vision. That's athleticgreens.com/vision. Check it out. And once your body is healthy, the next thing anybody should do with a healthy body is start an e-commerce business, obviously. And the way to do that is with Shopify. I have done it. I can absolutely tell you that if you've ever had anything you want to sell online, your art, your baking, your knitting, your whatever it is, right? If you want to start a business and have that website that really inspires professionalism, you want to do things like, hey, you know, I want to use a promo code, or I want to have a promotional time, or I want to discount it. It does all of that for you. It makes it easy to just focus on what your product is and how you want to find that customer that needs what you have. They'll put your products on Facebook and Instagram and all that, integrate with everything, drag and drop, simple, put videos on, get reviews, all those things. So there's also 24/7 help and support, by the way. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Don't know why, but that's what they said. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. And last, but certainly not least, is one that I think everybody's already using. This might be the one that I've had more people ask us for the promo code, the creator code, than ever before, and that's NordVPN. Very, very simple. You should use a VPN. I hope you'll use Nord. I use it. I think you'll like it. But if you're not, just use a VPN. Make sure you do it. It protects your privacy. It protects how you're being tracked. It protects you from people trying to steal identity and all that stuff. But one of the things that it can do is it can help you browse in a different geographic location. So like if you want to see those match of the day highlights after we win 10-0 over Southampton, that's a place you can go and do it, even if you're not there. If you want to browse American Netflix or Australian Netflix, whatever it is, there's an app on your phone, an app for the tablet, an app for the computer. You just quick click the region you want to browse into and you're there, you're secure. They also have threat protection. So it'll kick in and delete anything, malware before it gets on your computer. So all you have to do right now is go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Using our link, you'll receive a huge discount on a 2-year plan and a free 1 month. What I should mention, though, is it's risk-free. So you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So even if you sign up for that, if you don't like it, you just get it back and pretend the whole situation never happened. Check it out. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay, over to you, Adrian Clarke. And it says here, Elliot Smith, coming now. Okay, and so it is my great pleasure to introduce Adrian Clarke, who you will find on the Breakdown Live. And if you haven't caught it yet, you should be watching it on Arsenal's website. It's tremendous analysis. Says a man who may or may not know tremendous analysis when he sees it, but I'll ask Clive, and I know he's a huge fan of Adrian's as well. So definitely check that out. Adrian, it's just such a pleasure to have you back on.
Oh, it's great to be here. Yeah, good to speak to you, Elliot.
Yeah, so we are speaking in an interesting moment, right? Because Arsenal sit in a position that in any regular season or maybe any previous time, we'd be feeling really good about the position we find ourselves in, having a lead at the top of the table with just a few games left in the season. But it's the team that's trying to overtake us that makes the perception of our situation maybe seem less advantageous than it is. And I'm curious, I know you're known for phenomenal analysis, but let's just get to the psychology of it for a second. How are you feeling right now in terms of our chances to go on and win this title in light of the fact that City do look as fearsome as they are?
Yeah, it's. I wish it wasn't City that was chasing us down. Yeah. That is for sure. I think we all do. It's been an awesome season. I've absolutely loved it. Look, there was a stat that I saw this week that I almost had to go back and check myself to see whether it was right. And it was across the last 5 years. You know, the closest we've come to the eventual champions is 24 points, and it ranged between 24 and 43. Across the last 5 seasons. So let's get that into context first. Where we are is phenomenal. And it's not as if City are picking up less points than they usually do. So that's to be celebrated. It's been awesome. Do I think, where am I standing on our chances? I think they're around 50-50, maybe just below 50-50 given Manchester City's ridiculous form at the moment. And one or two, not alarming things, but one or two little concerns that have crept in that are mainly, I think, born out of the players that have been missing. So yeah, we're not in our best period. City certainly are. And for that reason, I guess you make them marginal favourites, but it's almost 50-50. And anyone that is saying, that's it, it's over, it's done, is wrong. This is the time to fight.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's interesting how people will look for explanations that are not the obvious or clear explanation for why something is happening rather than just the obvious one. And what I mean is you'll hear a lot of, Arsenal are bottling it, or mentality this or mentality that, when actually, we're playing right now without one of our most influential players of the season, one of the best players in the entire league. And then that was at Anfield. And then against West Ham, we played without two of them. Two of the players that I think are absolutely essential to the way we want to build play, control games, and especially build from the back. So before we talk Holding or Tierney specifically, because I think there are specifics about them that we can discuss, with respect to the West Ham game, and maybe even Anfield as well, if you want to go there, are there specific tactical differences in the way we have been playing that you noticed in their absence? Something that maybe West Ham exploited that they wouldn't have been able to if Zinchenko and or Saliba had been there?
Yeah, well, I think for the penalty incident, I think there's a clear difference because ordinarily we would probably have had Zinchenko alongside Thomas Partey showing for the ball, maybe with Gabriel with the ball at his feet in that left back slot, and probably we would have created a 2v1 and we would have probably played our way out of it. So that is a clear difference. Not to say that Tierney doesn't do that. He does sometimes, and he does it okay, just not quite as well as Zinchenko. But what I thought was really interesting for that penalty was how high everybody else was. Ødegaard and Xhaka were out of the picture on the TV, very, very high. And what West Ham did, and I think this was deliberate because they're not a pressing team, they went 3 for 3 on our defence. They had Bowen on Tierney. They had Paqueta on Gabriel, I think. And they had Antonio on who would it have been? Rob Holding. So they went 3 on 3. and they left Thomas Partey spare, and everyone else was pushed up in an Arsenal shirt. And that put a lot of pressure on the pass and on Thomas Partey. And of course, Declan Rice is a brilliant presser. He steams in, steals the ball, albeit probably with a handball, and they score, or they get a penalty from that 4v4, which kind of turned into a 4v2. So that is a problem, and I think, if we had Zinchenko there, the setup would have been different. The other key difference, I think, is with pressing and playing a bit further up the pitch. It's obvious, isn't it, when Saliba plays, that we can go a bit higher and win the ball higher up in the pitch with confidence that should we get caught with one long ball, we've got the speed to deal with it. And there was a number that did the rounds yesterday. I got sent it about I can't remember what it is. It's called a starting position, or it's where Arsenal win the ball back and start their moves. That's the essence of the stat. And this season it's the highest ever in terms of where we start our moves, because we win it high and that's where we build from. I think it's 44 metres away from our goal. So it's a record. Early Arteta was 39 metres. And what we've been doing, what happened at West Ham, we went backwards. We went back from 44 to, I think, 40 or 41. So again, we can't quite press with as much confidence. We play a bit deeper when Rob Holding's there. And it's obvious, it's logical. So it's just something we have to deal with. But opponents obviously sense it and they change their game accordingly.
Do you think any of that is also related to teams opting to go long and win second balls? Liverpool do go long a lot. It's one thing that I think, as I watched them more in their pomp, I think of them as, a ball playing team, but actually what they wanted to do was get the ball as quickly to the opposition, defensive third as possible, pin them back there, and then use that incredible counter press to create transitions and to create broken play and create chances that way. It feels like, and I have to admit, I don't think the data backs it up, because I think Scott was telling me that the number of long balls we faced against West Ham wasn't really any more than we're used to facing. So maybe it's just the success rate, but it feels like teams are opting not to try to beat our press, but rather beat the back line to second balls. And Saliba, obviously a very big player, dominant in the air. I actually think Zinchenko reads long balls really well, reads the flight of the ball really well.
Great spring, hasn't he? Yeah.
It's weird, right? Because he's physically, I don't think of him as a great combative defender, but I think he does well with that stuff.
He's got something in his boots, hasn't he? That makes him springy. I think you're right. In a way, who was it that started? Brentford probably started it around that period. The team started to go much longer against us and get success. I mean, Manchester City. I mean, I tried to block that game from my memory, as I'm sure we all do, because it was painful. But they boomed it.
Yeah, they did.
They boomed it on purpose. Yeah, because they felt that they could win the second balls and that they could turn us, or they could get in behind our fullbacks for obvious reasons. Because Zinchenko's not always at the fullback position, isn't he? So that's an obvious area to target. No, I do think that, and I also think the point I made about Ødegaard and Xhaka being high, it's great for us going forward, isn't it? I think, well, how many is it? 28 direct goal involvements between the pair of them. Fantastic. But with that comes a slight gamble, doesn't it? Because you're a body or two light if the other team go from back to front really quickly. And I do think that teams have started to do that against us. And does it mean we're going to have to pull Granit Xhaka back in a little bit? Sometimes it might mean that, yeah.
But this is then where you go into the questions that lead to people talking about bottling it and so on and so forth. But surely there's a better explanation, although maybe there isn't, which is that you can say, well, you're going to be more vulnerable with Rob Holding, and especially without Tierney, and you say all the things you want to say about missing those players and how it changes how we play. And yet, in both games, we had 2-0 leads, and we looked capable of creating more chances. Maybe there's going to be vulnerability at the back, but as we've seen this season, 4-1 wins plenty of games. You know what I mean? We're not playing 4-4s anymore, thankfully. But at 2-0, we really did seem to stop playing. I think Tim felt that there was a complacency that crept in, almost like it was job done, and a little bit of cockiness. Other people will say that the pressure got to us. Do you see something specific in the way we played at 2-0 in either of these games that's the same or different, or concerns you about why we've, and for me, people know this about me, I'm more of an attack-minded supporter than defensive-minded supporter. So for me, the alarming thing is just the paucity of chances we created at 2-0, the way we stopped really threatening, although at Anfield, I guess we did some of that. So what changed at 2-0 in these games that we need to look out for?
Yeah, it is a really good question. Obviously, I've watched both the games a couple of times, and it's I don't want to. I think the word complacency is too strong, but we certainly eased off, and by easing off, it doesn't mean you're getting cocky or arrogant. I think it means you stop making as many forward runs. You stop closing down with as much intensity. You just hold back a little bit. You don't work quite as hard to support a teammate. And what happens then is if that's happening, someone might have to take an extra touch or an extra 2 touches, and then they get caught on the ball. So I think a bit of intensity in our running definitely went, certainly at West Ham, a little bit at Liverpool, although I still liked a lot of the Liverpool performance. I really did. We created
Clive and I did a rewatch of the second half, and I was surprised at how much we were in that game in the second half in ways that I hadn't appreciated when the nerves of the actual first watch were
completely there. There was a spell around the penalty and around that penalty and the first save from Ramsdale where he shoves Zinchenko out the way. That was a little rocky patch. But that aside, it wasn't until the 80th minute that we really were second best to Liverpool. I think we were pretty assured, and we created some good chances. So, I think we've seen the same thing there. It could be an element of tightness, a little bit of, not wanting to do anything risky at 2-0 up, that kind of mentality creeping in. I don't know. But it's just an edge went from our play, a freedom went from our play, and work rate. And I don't have any numbers to back this up. I've asked, no one will give them to me, but I don't have any evidence to say that we did back off. But that is kind of what happened in my opinion, and also in key moments we made mistakes and we made slightly panicky decisions that we weren't making. Pre-World Cup, like Gabriel for that penalty. I mean, there's absolutely no need to dive in because Holding's got it, hasn't he? It's infuriating. For Rob Holding at Anfield, he does nothing wrong. That's a definite initiation from Jota. But Kieran Tierney and Gabriel coming out from that wide free kick without even looking around them, coming way too far without scanning and screening. Where's Bowen? They both react too late and they score. And these were the kind of mistakes we weren't making before. The goal. The other point I wanted to make actually that I have noticed, and this kind of falls a little bit on Xhaka and Ødegaard too. And I don't want to be picking on them because they've been so good. But what I noticed with Liverpool in that second half, particularly with Jordan Henderson, was that he kept making run after run after run from the centre to the right to overload Zinchenko, who already had Salah. And he's running off. Who's he running off? That's questionable. Is it Xhaka? Maybe. Is it Martinelli? Sometimes. So, and they created those overloads. And if you think about their goal, that first goal that Salah scuffs in, it stems from Curtis Jones, who's a central midfielder, going left wing and creating a 2v1 around Ben White. And who does he run off? He runs off Ødegaard. They get the 2v1, he gets in. And then Ødegaard's tracking Jota for the second phase of that. And he can't keep up with Jota. And he gets in on a 2v1. So I think opponents are targeting our fullback areas for sure. And creating those overloads that we love to create at the other end of the pitch. And I don't think we've got to the bottom of dealing with those yet. Hopefully we sort that.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is substitutions, because it is definitely the case that when the game isn't going your way, as it starts to wear on, supporters all think, change it, Mikel, change it, do something. But I think it also takes a tremendous amount of of insight and patience and understanding of your team to know when changing it may not be for the best. We're in an interesting situation with the squad right now because we are missing some players. I think Trossard is a clear example of a player that could be starting any game and no one would have a problem with it. Outside of that, I think we're seeing what Mikel means when he says we're here sooner than he expected. The problem with being in a title challenge sooner than you expected is just below the surface, you may have a team that's not quite a title challenge team, right? You have the legacy of being an 8th place team still rooting around in there. And that's not meant to pick on any players, but like in the last couple of games, some of the changes to me felt like changes because I've got to change it, but not because I know this will change it for the best. So I have a couple things I want to talk to you about subs on, which is in the West Ham game, the decision to take off Jesus, who I thought was doing great work, dropping deep, connecting play, giving us an out. You know, in the Liverpool game even as well, the timing of the changes actually came in moments where I thought that there might have been opportunity for the players on the pitch to solve it, and were solving it. I realize Odegaard hasn't had his best couple of games. I realize Jesus is coming back from injury, but I don't know that I thought the changes, either in terms of when they were made or who they were made, were the ones that were going to influence the game we needed in the way we needed to. So do you have any issues with, and look, it's always hard to be in the position of criticizing Mikel Arteta, who is doing as good a job as can humanly be done, but we get the benefit of hindsight in a way he doesn't. So using our benefit of hindsight and being wise after the fact, what are your thoughts on the substitution patterns we've seen in the last couple of games?
No, I'm glad you brought it up. Mikel Arteta has been sensational. We all agree on that, but it doesn't mean that we can't question some of his decisions, and maybe be
he does.
Critical of it. Exactly. I said it on the show. I said it on the breakdown live at the time. I said, wasn't sure about the substitutions. It felt to me like when we were really chasing a goal in the last 10 minutes plus injury time, I wanted Jesus on that pitch.
Same,
What I find a little bit frustrating is that we tend to make the substitutions in an attacking sense in the same shape. What we could have done is maybe put Trossard on to join Jesus up front and to maybe sacrifice a Granit Xhaka or a Kieran Tierney and just shuffle Granit across or something, just to mix it up a little bit to keep him on. With the other ones, I feel that it's worked so often when he's gone on a hunch sub this season, obviously with Nelson being the prime example, that Mikel Arteta is really prepared to just gamble on something a little bit of a wild card. And I think he's tried that a couple of times and it hasn't worked. So the main gripe really at West Ham was I think we could have gone to a back three, maybe gone 3-5-2 just for the last 15, 20 to see if we could do something, create something inside, in and around their box, because they were too comfortable, weren't they, West Ham, considering how bad they are. Absolutely. We should have been creating better opportunities. And I wanted an extra forward on there, and we didn't really get one. At Anfield, it's as if Mikel foresaw the onslaught that was about to happen from 80th minute onwards by putting Kivior on. But again, it's like, did that invite it? That's a legit criticism, isn't it? And to put Kivior, or someone who's had very few Premier League minutes, into that environment, that test, almost felt a little bit unfair on him. It was real tough. So, and it didn't work, did it? So yeah, I have said it on air that I think the subs in the last two games, if Mikel had his time again, he would do completely different ones, and and I'm sure he assesses it himself.
Well, and this is the thing, I think sometimes you just have to admit you got lucky. For example, Reece Nelson's performance against Bournemouth was brilliant, and that goal is a moment I'll remember forever. Having been at that game, it'll go on to be one of my favorite experiences in football, whatever happens this season. But sometimes I think we can create stories in our head. We can create superstitions about a performance when in actuality, Gabriel Martinelli, with the best will in the world to Reece Nelson, Gabriel Martinelli is a better player than Reece Nelson. And we've seen him finish games strong and impact games at the very end himself. Gabriel Jesus, if you tell me Gabriel Jesus stays on for 90 minutes, he's creating a big chance or going down for a penalty or dribbling past some tired backup center back for West Ham in that game. You know what I mean? I just think that sometimes when you have starters who are title quality and subs who are not, which is where we find ourselves, maybe with the exception of Trossard, even the slightly fatigued, out of form starter is still someone, to persist with. And taking off Odegaard in these last couple of games, I don't want to pretend I think Odegaard's been great in the last couple of games. He hasn't, but is he going to find that one ball through to Jesus? Is he going to swing in swinger to the far post? Is he going to make that second man run, arrive in the box? We've seen him score late goals himself.
Yeah.
I thought he could have persisted. One player that hasn't come off is Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka is our best player. Your best player stays on. I get it. He's over 3,000 minutes in all competitions now. He had missed the penalty. I just wonder, are we reaching a point where we are asking too much of Saka to be the never come off, always stay on, take all the penalties, win us the title player, and then actually maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if a Trossard for Saka sub was something in mind, or just something where Bukayo Saka doesn't have to be in this crucible constantly of trying to win Arsenal the title as its main man, because that's the position he's been thrust into. And from a minute standpoint alone, he's getting into a what you might call a red zone.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I think there might have been an element of not wanting to bury him by taking him off after he missed the pen. There could have been that psychology factor in the decision. I think he can handle it, Bukayo. I really do. And obviously he sat a game out recently, didn't he? It was the Leeds game, wasn't it? He didn't start that one because he'd been feeling unwell. So maybe in the eyes of Mikel, that's your breather. That's you done. That's you done. You get
that
grafted.
was coming off, obviously, international break where he'd played twice for England. Exactly. So, almost 90 minutes
really
both times. So.
Yeah, and he has looked a bit jaded. He hasn't been at his brilliant best, but every time you kind of start to think that, he then goes and wins you the next game, doesn't he? So it's a strange situation. What I think might have happened with the last two games is that Mikel mentally got impacted by the comebacks. Obviously, Liverpool were only 2-1 at the time. West Ham was 2-2. And I think there's that part of you that thinks, I've got to change it because they've come back. This is a bit of a disaster. I need to shake things up. Whereas earlier on in the season, he was very clear in his thinking that I haven't got anything to shake things up with, so I'm just going to stick with these guys. Now he's got Trossard and Jorginho. I think he almost feels like he has to do that, and he doesn't actually. I didn't have an issue, by the way, with Jorginho coming on because I thought Thomas Partey was having a poor second half, and
I've heard it said that he's nursing some kind of injury as well, carrying a little bit of something, which is the story of his Arsenal career. But I mean, personally, I probably would have persisted with him as well. I think that ultimately, one of the reasons we made this comment that it was good actually to be knocked out of the Europa League, right, is that you play once a week the rest of the season while City plays multiple times. And it's not just then that you maybe can avoid injury, which ironically we have not done, but it's also that you can let those starters go 90 every weekend for 8 more games, right? I know it's the business end of the season. Everybody's starting to flag a little bit. So maybe you go a little lighter in training in terms of your intensity, but now Martinelli can give you a burst in the 80th minute because he's not playing Thursday, Sunday, right? Because we saw it. An even slightly a full-strength Arsenal can top the Premier League table all season long. A slightly rotated Arsenal can't get past Sporting Lisbon in the Europa League. So the delta from our best 11 to our rotated 11 is quite a distance right now, and it's something we'll have to solve if we want to be a proper Champions League team next season. Yeah,
and it's in those big moments at the end of games where you get a free kick. It's 30 yards, it's 35 yards out. It's too far to shoot, so you need an in-swinger or an out-swinger. That's where you want Odegaard. With all due respect to Fabio Vieira, who has produced some good deliveries this season, you want Odegaard over it. And the same with Martinelli. Who do you want for that counter that might win you the game? You want Martinelli there ahead of Nelson, don't you? It's clear. With Jesus, very quickly, did you see his pass map from the game?
I mean, I know he was dropping quite deep, but no, I don't. Our whole pass map was... he was dropping in almost like, in a way, we saw Lacazette do a bit last season.
It was extreme, Lacazette. I would say it was like watching Rooney. You know, when Rooney was sort of untamable, where he just felt like he had to have a touch anywhere on the pitch. He was our Zinchenko, wasn't he? He was the one that was creating the overloads. But the problem was he barely made a pass down the centre of the pitch. It was always, in central midfield. It was either in midfield or in the wide areas. And if you, it will be included in my actual breakdown, which will be shown on the breakdown live on Friday for the Southampton game. That'll air just 5 minutes into the show or something. I show it, and there's literally one pass in what you would regard as a centre forward position. Everything else,
zone 14 at the top of the box.
Everywhere else is he's getting involved everywhere else, but where he kind of is meant to play. And I'm not going to hammer him for that. I kind of like the freedom and the liberty and all of that. But sometimes you need a striker just to bounce a pass off of, and we didn't really have that at West Ham, and I think that was to the team's detriment.
Well, and that's I've said it so many times, listeners are going to hate hearing it again, but Zinchenko's superpower is he's always a yard or two away from wherever the ball is, giving an option to a player, and maybe that lets the center forward stay a little higher up the pitch, not have to come back to try to link the play. I think for me, it leads to a subject that I like to discuss then, which is if you are trying to chase a game, let's say we're at the Etihad and it's 2-1 City and it's late and we want to try to inject a little bit of an extra attacking option without taking away too much of our stability. A lot of people are asking about this and we've never seen it. So it's purely hypothetical at this point. But what if it's a Trossard for a Xhaka? Or what if it's a player for a Xhaka? So Xhaka's been brilliant, as you said, most of the season. But Xhaka is still a central midfielder playing in a somewhat unfamiliar role throughout his career and doing it well, right? He's taken on those responsibilities pretty well. But I think it is fair to say that around the box, there are players in our squad that are maybe slightly more comfortable and give a little bit more of end product in that area. So do you think that swapping an attacker for Xhaka gives us a little bit more oomph and something that we maybe should consider trying? Because we really have not seen Mikel go for that.
No, definitely. Yeah, 100%. That would be my first port of call. Number one would be Trossard for Xhaka. Number two would be Smith Rowe for Xhaka. And number three would be Fabio Vieira for Xhaka. But number three is the one we've seen most.
There was a period, Adrian, in the middle of the season where Vieira for Xhaka on around 70 minutes had kind of become a swap. He did that for a couple of games running, and I thought maybe we're seeing the evolution of that position, but it's kind of gone away.
Trossard can definitely do it. Definitely can do it. I've seen him play deep for Brighton. He can obviously play striker either side. I think he's always better on the left as well. And Trossard and Martinelli and Jesus, that little axis on the left-hand side, that's dangerous. I wouldn't want to mark it, would you?
No.
So,
no.
Yeah, I definitely think that. Yeah, that is for sure an option. I touched on it earlier, but there is the possibility of going 3-5-2 as well. Well, you could even do that when you're really chasing a game. Have Trossard as one of your three, and then chuck on Eddie, and have him there, and maybe take off your left back, probably take off your left back and go with Saka right wing back on one side. Maybe Zinchenko on the other. And have all of your big guys and Nketiah and Jesus together. We saw it in pre-season. We saw a 3-5-2. It was over in the States, I think. I'm sure we saw it, and it looked good. But it's not. We've not really seen it in the league, have we? So maybe he's keeping it up his sleeve. I don't know, keeping the powder dry. But yeah, I think I'd like to see it because we kind of play with a back three anyway, don't we? At times, So
I mean, it is right. It's White, Holding, and Gabriel. White, Saliba, and Gabriel. And Zinchenko's playing wherever the heck he feels like he can influence the game. Exactly. Well, you mentioned a player then who, if you're chasing a game and need a goal, seems like he would be helpful in that endeavor, but has not been used, and that's Emil Smith Rowe. It's hard because speculation about players has led us to some bad places in the past. I know when Martinelli was coming back from his knee injury, there was some speculation that, he doesn't seem to be liked by Arteta. He's not using him, but actually Arteta was careful with him, and we've seen the outcome of that. Now, to be fair, at that time, Mikel Arteta was quoted once as saying, "I love Martinelli more than you do." That was literally a quote.
Yeah.
With Emil Smith-Rowe, as I've said quite repetitively now on this podcast, it feels like there's a little more bite in some of the comments the manager makes in terms of what the player has to do. What's your view on Smith-Rowe? Because he's a season removed from being, I think, our second top scorer. He wears the number 10. He's an academy kid, so we all really want to see him succeed. I mean, he's in Bukayo's song. He's got to succeed so he can keep the song. What do you think is going on with Smith-Rowe at this moment? I
just don't know. Honestly, I wish I did know. And I don't really have any ins, particularly at Colney, and I don't get involved in that kind of stuff. I don't get to hear bits, of information like maybe like people would expect I would. I'm as frustrated as everyone else because he's a great player. I love the way he drives at teams with the ball at his feet. It just feels like he's got a lot to offer. But is he struggling with his fitness? I mean, there was talk before about him living right, wasn't there? And I think he'd had some criticism about that. And I was led to believe that his diet was much improved and that he was lean and mean and whatnot. So, I don't know.
Certainly understand. Taller. he's trying to be a big guy.
I don't dislike Fabio Vieira at all. I think there's a potential there, but I would choose Smith-Rowe over him every day of the week based on what I've seen of both players until this point. So something on a daily basis must be happening that Mikel doesn't like. I don't know what it is, I'm afraid. I wish I had the answer.
It's hard to say. It's funny. I remember, I think it was a game either at Old Trafford or at the Emirates. I don't remember, but it was against Manchester United where Martinelli got subbed off very early. Maybe it was at halftime. And he had just not been in the positions Mikel wanted. Mikel had been trying to instruct him through that game, and finally he took him off and what was someone that he felt was positionally more what he wanted. Obviously, Martinelli has learned to play the Mikel Arteta way and play it brilliantly, but I do wonder if Smith-Rowe is not yet really picking up where he needs to be in this sort of positional system and his responsibilities off the ball. Because in the Bournemouth game, he comes on, he has the header for our equalizer. He was influencing the game in the final third, but he really did seem to be getting a lot of instruction from Mikel in that game. Then he gets taken off for Reece Nelson. Yeah. I do think that Mikel is very specific about where he wants his players to be and where he wants them to play. And I just wonder if there's something in Smith-Rowe's game about being sort of that secondary second striker, late runs into the box, what he really likes to do as a player, if maybe he's struggling with what his role is meant to be for Mikel.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. Because, I think you're right. The details that Mikel expects of his players are pretty intense. And, tactically, you've got to be clever. You've got to be intelligent. You've got to be really bright. And I think he is football intelligent, Emil Smith-Rowe. I really do. I think he's capable of learning all the instructions. But, that is maybe the best explanation that I've heard. I mean, certain players just frustrate managers, don't they? Where they feel they have to coach them through games. I think there are times where I was that guy for certain managers where they feel they have to talk you through everything. And I absolutely despise that. Hated it when a manager was saying, pass it, do this, walking me through the game. And I'd be like, shut up, just let me play. Just let me play. And maybe Emil is in that, and him and Mikel are in that kind of loggerheads at the moment where he wants to be freer. Mikel wants him to do specific things, and they're both, it's not quite clicking. I sincerely hope they get it right and that they can sort of get him up to speed again. Because when he was hot last year, he was great, and he's probably one of our best finishers. He's an excellent finisher. I think his strike rate was superb last season. So we need whatever it is, we need to fix it. But you do get that sense now, unless there's one big moment in the future, in the next few weeks, where Emil has his moment, you get the feeling that this season might just ebb away for him a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a great look when we need a goal at the Olympic Stadium that I don't even know if he warmed up. I didn't see him warm up even. So I don't think that's a great look. And again, it may be the case that Mikel doesn't think his body's ready. He's struggled with that for so long. We'll just have to see. We'll sort of start to wrap up with two other things just quickly. One thing that I think a lot of Arsenal fans are doing right now in the wake of these last two games is starting to galaxy brain the back four a little bit and thinking about how we should change it. I think it is one of these unique situations with Kieran Tierney where overwhelmingly the fan base adores the player, but overwhelmingly the fan base is starting to come to the awareness of what he lacks in terms of the way we're asking our fullback to play. Right. So it's not that people are questioning the talent or questioning the guy. It's just a fit for the system. And the irony of all ironies is the thing that people hated that they felt killed our season in previous seasons was Shaq at left back. And now we find ourselves in a position where people are saying, well, actually, the guy who kind of played like Zinchenko might be Shaq. It's just, time is a flat circle. So are you starting to think, heading into the Southampton game, with the questions around Rob Holding, if Zinchenko's not available, are you ready to start galaxy braining the back four? And if we go to the Etihad without a Saliba, would you be starting to think, well, actually Partey to right back and Ben White to center back, and we could use Jorginho? Are you starting to get, are you ready for galaxy braining the back four if we don't have Saliba and Zinchenko back?
I didn't know what galaxy braining was until a minute ago, but now I do. So.
Yeah, you do now. It's simple. You just do Xhaka, Gabriel, White, and Partey as your back four.
If Xhaka and Partey are in the back four, then he's in midfield. But yeah, it's of course. I'm like all Arsenal supporters. Of course, you think, could Ben? The thing is, I don't want to move Ben White because I think Ben White was one of our best players at West Ham. Actually,
He got my stock rising in our instant reaction, so now I feel
made him
validated.
main man on the breakdown. So there you go. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I made him main man because he did very little wrong in the game, and he did some really good bits actually. I just think him and Saka are just a great marriage, and I kind of don't want to change it. I think if Tomiyasu was fit, he would probably be playing at centre half.
Losing them both at the same time, Saliba and Tomiyasu, has created a tremendous amount of disruption.
Yeah, first and foremost, please, William Saliba, get back for City. We need you. Need you for that game. And I think, I don't know, my hunch is that they'll get him out there somehow, by hook or by crook. Then at left back, I wouldn't really go changing it. I got to be honest. I think that Tierney is still the best bet, but maybe we just have to adapt a little bit and change our style because he's not as comfortable in that Zinchenko position. What I picked up on at West Ham, and if you watch the game back and look at all of West Ham's turnover moments where they kind of nick the ball back and then break on us, a lot of them came from Tierney passes from the wing, actually. Passes where he's in a traditional left-back spot, playing it infield to a Martinelli, to a Jesus, to a Thomas Partey. And those were the passes that were getting cut out. And they're the passes that we've actually not really been playing because of Zinchenko's position. So that won't have been lost on Mikel Arteta, in my opinion. So he'll either get Kieran to change that up or he will change it.
We may have gotten. Continue.
No. I realise I fudged the question, but I don't think I would be going with a random back four. No, I still think just this back four. If we have to persist with it, it just has to be better.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't move Thomas Partey to right back. I think Clive has pointed this out, but especially if he's carrying something where I think Partey really helps us. Ironically, not so much against West Ham, though, is in those little tight spaces where he can operate to get out of trouble and progress the ball. Having him have to cover big spaces up and down the touchline, maybe it works for one game and in the 70th minute he feels something in his hamstring and now you've won the battle and lost the war. So I wouldn't be making that change. I do think that, and again, with the best will in the world, I think Tierney is a problem for the way we want to play because I think his inclusion makes it much easier to target whoever's playing central midfield. I think not having that presence of Zinchenko 2 yards on the slant, right where you need him to make that exit, and then the ability to operate in tight spaces himself, one thing that Tierney does is he just has that clock in his head of, I'm under pressure, hoof it. You know what I mean? I'm under pressure, get it out. And that can be okay. I mean, I wish Tomiyasu had done that against City in the home game, but you're not going to dominate games if you can't play the ball under pressure and if you can't play it first time. And Zinchenko really operates in tight spaces in a beautiful way. And when you combine that with Partey, then you become very press resistant. Yeah. When you take that away, I think it's easier to target us.
I agree. I do agree with you on Tierney. Again, I like him as a player, but the way we play doesn't suit him at the moment. And yeah, I hadn't really thought of. I've got to be honest, I hadn't really thought of putting Xhaka there. But you could, and then you could bring Jorginho into the team, I guess, in a more in the Xhaka position, or a Trossard if you were chasing the goal. So yeah, it's a possibility because it's. I mean, you're always worried about Granit Xhaka's pace, aren't you, at left back? But if the left back's never at left back, and it's Gabriel, then it kind of nullifies.
I mean, the Zinchenko-Xhaka foot race would take you a long time to watch, but I don't think there's much between them.
Exactly. Yeah, I do agree. I think that we lose quite a lot, and it's not a slight on Tierney. He's just not built the same way. I think if we had an alternative left back, a left-footed player that was technical like Zinchenko, they would be playing ahead of Tierney right now, but we just don't. So that might be part of the shopping list. Part of the shopping list for this summer, I think, will absolutely be. And I know he's a very unique player, Zinchenko, but finding someone that can kind of cover that would be good.
Yeah, especially, I mean, if you look at players that really facilitate the kind of football we want to play, forget talent level, the kind of football, Saliba and Zinchenko are two. By the way, some of this shouldn't be a surprise. I think Saliba at his peak this season, minus maybe the return from the World Cup where I think he was a little off his game, has been at what you might call Virgil van Dijk levels of quality. And you look at a Liverpool team that was nearly 100-point team. They took Van Dijk out of the team the season after they won the title, and they barely scraped top 4.
Yeah.
And, people look for reasons in all kinds of places when the obvious answer could be staring you in the face, which is sometimes you have a player who's so instrumental to the way you play and the way players around you play that when you take him out and you've been a 95-point pace team, it's not that you become bad. Maybe you become an 85-point pace team, which is a great team. But it's not great enough to stay ahead of Manchester City. And that's the thing, because all we've done is draw 2 games. We've drawn 2 away games, right? It's just the manner of how we've done it that has people alarmed.
But think about it, though. I mean, in defence of Rob Holding this, Rob Holding was there when we were outplaying Liverpool for 40 minutes. He was there when we were outplaying West Ham for 30 minutes. And when you look at all of the goals, I don't pin any of them on Rob. It's not because Rob Holding was playing. Can we pin one on Rob? No, I don't think so.
No. I think there are moments in the game that, and this is just my view, right, where you started to see the line height drop a little bit, right, which makes things it easier to pin you back and things like that. So just in terms of how you can find Arsenal going from dominating a game to suddenly being on the back foot to not being able to control it anymore. If your line height drops and you can't play first time around pressure, there was a goal, I've referenced it before, and I can't remember, maybe you'll remember which one it is. We had a beautiful goal this season, and part of it, we had like a lot of intricate passes around the back, and then Saliba Cruyffs it and switches it,
Fulham,
big left foot switch. Okay, Fulham, there you go. Big left foot switch, I think, to Martinelli. We were under pressure. We're at the back. Did he hoof it out? Did he boot it long? No, he Cruyffs it and plays a beautiful switch, and look at what the outcome is. You've got to be able to punish teams who want to come push you back. Yeah. And maybe we've lost a bit of that, especially when you take 2 pieces out. Yeah.
So they're 2 press-resistant players. Zinchenko and Saliba, 2 of the most press-resistant players in the Premier League. And West Ham wouldn't have had anywhere near as much joy. They probably wouldn't have dared press us the way that they did if those 2 played. But that's just the simple fact that we don't have players that are equally press resistant or equally good on the ball as Saliba and Zinchenko. We definitely lose that. We lose the ability to squeeze higher with Holding. We have to go deeper. All of these things are facts, and we're a weaker team with Holding in it. But I'm just on across the last 2 games, he was still part of the side that were outplaying those opponents.
Yep.
And I wouldn't blame him for any of the 4 goals that we conceded. So it's an easy target, but it's not just on him.
You totally agree. And you know what? A team should be more than the sum of its parts. I just think when you take key components out, that you'll start to see, maybe not even in places where you expect it, right? You'll start to see, I mean, think of the human body, right? You can hurt your knee. And because you hurt your knee, you're putting more weight on your left-hand side. And what happens? You get back pain, right? You got back pain because you were favoring a knee, right? It's a dumb analogy, which is sort of my whole MO, but it's the point that the way you compensate for changes in dynamics in a team can expose vulnerabilities in other areas you may not have seen. For example, Gabriel, who has been one of the players of the season, but maybe not having his calming influence, his buddy who can sprint, his buddy who can dominate next to him, is why he goes to ground, because he thinks, I've got to be Superman. I've got to do, I don't have Willow next to me. I've got to go dominate. And he's playing hero ball instead of just playing his role. Those kinds of things, it's hard to say. The question that Clive asked me to ask you, and I know I've kept you longer than I intended,
so right.
I'll wrap it up. But he'd be mad at me if I don't ask this. We go win the title. That obviously is happening, and we're excited about it. But then you got to be even better. You got to win the title and the Champions League. Where's the next evolution? And is it Declan Rice? We saw Declan Rice have a big handshake with Mikel. We saw him play, I think, a pretty good game against us. He is a player we're very strongly linked with. He, I think, divides opinion stylistically. There are other players like Caicedo or Zubimendi, and slightly different profiles. But there's definitely a question of where we go. Partey's over 30 next season, and Xhaka already is. So those positions seem like an obvious place. Do you see Declan Rice as the clear next step in our evolution?
100%, yeah, 200%. Okay. Yeah, 200%. Awesome. I'm a fully fledged member of the Rice fan club. I am. I just, I don't think there are a lot of people out there that can't see all of the good that he does. Maybe because of the way he runs. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about him, but people do consistently underestimate his influence. You saw with the turnover on Partey how great his timing is, how match intelligent he is, how athletic he is. He gets around that pitch fantastically. He can be your Partey, but he can be your box to box Xhaka as well. No one has regained possession more in the Premier League this season than Declan Rice. And he's not even playing for a pressing team, but he mops everything up. He's just there. And I've watched quite a bit of West Ham this season. On the ball, his decision making, I would say 9 times out of 10 is spot on. He makes the right passes. I think his long pass accuracy, which is important, is very high. And he knits. I think he's good enough in tight areas as well.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you think he's got that close control tight area operation like a Partey? Because that's an area where I'd have a question.
I don't think he's quite as good as Partey at that, but he can operate in tight areas, definitely.
He's more bombastic. He's like a big space player when he's driving out from midfield. That's when you really notice him.
My overriding feeling is that he's primarily worked for 2 coaches that aren't in Arteta's league, and that's David Moyes and Gareth Southgate, managers that don't ask that much of him in a tactical sense that compared to Arsenal. And I think he would just improve so much as an all-round footballer by joining us. And yeah, I think he would be a game changer. I never thought we'd be in a position where we could get him because he was always going to go to Man United, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, wasn't he? That was the destination. But because of what's happened this season, because of our stock rising, we're in the frame, aren't we? So yeah, I think he is the one that I would go all in for. I mean, I do like Caicedo as well, by the way, but and I wouldn't be upset.
Is he coming in to be Xhaka's replacement or Partey's replacement longer term? Because there's some disagreement, I think.
Rice, yeah. In season 1, it would be either or, wouldn't it? I think it would. He is absolutely bang in the middle of those two positionally. He's to the left, but deep line, but can do box to box. But I think over long term, it would be for Partey, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And then beyond Rice, I think it's all about beefing up the squad, isn't it? That's what it is, because in the Champions League, you've got to play your best team in the Champions League, which means you probably can't play your best team every week in the Premier League. If you want to win the Premier League, you need better players. So, yeah, it's get another striker, get another winger that can back up Saka and Martinelli. It's get another centre back that can be the equal of a Gabriel and Saliba. You know, those are the sort of things first things that pop into my head. It's exciting, isn't it? It is exciting. Whether we get what we want at the end of the season or not, this is such an exciting time to be an Arsenal supporter. It's wild because the last time we had, a young, talented squad, our only hope was please don't leave us. And of course they all wound up leaving us, and it feels now like maybe we're going to see a very different couple of years than we had at that time. So, and on Rice, just very quickly, I shouldn't have left it out. I mean, you've got a leader there. You've got a captain. Yeah. It's another captain in your team. He's pretty mouthy, he will, which is a positive. He'll tell people when they're not doing their jobs properly. He'll get in the ear of the referee. He's a personality. He's someone that is used to having total responsibility. So when West Ham needs something to happen, they just give it to Declan. And, we need the more players you can have like that, the better. Someone like a Caicedo is not at that stage yet. He's growing, isn't he, as a player?
Yeah.
I really hope. Really hope we can get him. But look, if City going for him or Newcastle going for him, it will make it tougher, won't it?
It will. I think he'd choose us over Newcastle at this stage, thankfully. But let's put it this way. One of the things that I think would annoy any manager and would annoy Mikel Arteta is when the key players in your team aren't available. Availability is important. I think it's one of the reasons Xhaka gets picked all the time. I know you're going to be available. I know what I'm going to get from you. Managers want predictability, right? And Declan Rice, you look at Bukayo Saka's minutes, and one of the few players that play more minutes than Bukayo Saka is Declan Rice. Well, and that's been a feature of his whole career.
I did a piece on it recently for the Premier League. I did a head-to-head with Declan Rice and James Ward-Prowse. I was sort of comparing, they're both talismanic midfielders for their teams. It was ahead of the meeting between West Ham and Southampton. And it turns out that they're the only two central midfielders in the entire Premier League to play every minute of the season.
It's amazing.
So, because neither manager ever wants to take them off, because they're that important. Yeah. So, but the fact that he's fit and sturdy enough to do that. And look, he didn't look tired the other day, did he? He was charging around. No,
and he's been doing it since he's 19. He was playing 2,500 minutes at 19 in the Premier League, which is just unheard of. So, I definitely think that's a check in his column. Box, you get the idea. We'll leave it there on my inability to articulate my thoughts. I thank you. I mean, you've been incredibly generous with your time. We've run quite a bit over, so I do apologize, but I think it's been to everybody listening's benefit. Adrian, a pleasure to have you on. And I should emphasize that you're going to be seeing some of us and some of the winners at the Brighton game to have a front row seat for the Breakdown Live. So we're looking forward to that.
I can't wait. Yeah, I just found out about this. This is awesome. Look, we want... the people that we have in the box, sometimes they're competition winners for My Arsenal Rewards. Sometimes they're just people from the Arsenal community that want to talk about Arsenal, that, whether they're on YouTube or bloggers or any of these things. So, I've been saying for a while, we need to get more and more people like this on the show, and I'm delighted that we're going to have a few of your buddies. So you're not going to be there. You're not going to be in the box?
No, the plan's to be there. Sure. Okay, I mean, if they if they let me in, there's always a question of whether I'm admitted.
But it's a big game.
What I will say, it'll be nice for Clive to hear some proper analysis and get a little bit schooled on that. So thank
Clive,
you ahead
Clive
of time.
Clive knows his stuff. Don't take any notice, Clive.
All right. Well, that's Adrian Clarke. Thanks, Adrian.
Cheers.